Welcome to Season 3 of Everything is Learning.
The podcast where we question, explore, and learn on purpose.
We're here to rethink and discover what's possible because learning never stops, and neither do we.
Let's dive in. This season, we are diving deep into the learning journeys and fascinating minds of incredible people we've met along our paths. Our guest today is a force. Today, we're welcoming Pav, a storyteller at heart who has turned curiosity and humor into a thriving career in podcasting. After facing redundancy, he took a leap into the unknown, teaching himself podcast production and co-founding Pancast PODuctions. His first major hit, WTAF, This Country podcast, quickly gained a loyal following, leading to live shows, cast interviews, and a passionate fan community. Never short on ideas, Pav and co-host Neil launched the Top 10 of Anything podcast, a fast-paced and entertaining deep dive into ranked lists covering movies, music, and more. With warmth and wit, he turns every episode into an engaging, laugh-filled conversation that feels like catching up with an old friend. Beyond the mic, Pav is a talented musician, performing as Pavo, the Human Jukebox, and a devoted husband, father, and Bampy, which means grandfather. His journey from career uncertainty to creative success proves that embracing curiosity, learning new skills, and taking risks can lead to something extraordinary. So let's get into it. Pav, welcome to the show.
Hello, ladies.
Great to see you.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you very much for having me and making me feel so important.
Oh, we love you. I told you after we met the first time that I feel like we are going to be lifelong friends. But as Marissa said, like you just make everybody feel like seen and comfortable, and so just for our listeners, our first guest appearance on another podcast was on Top 10 Pods or Top 10 of Anything podcast. I want to make sure I say that right. The whole thing.
That's fine.
And, and when we came on, we were like, oh, like we don't do video. And, Pav was like, oh, like you ladies look great. Like it'll be fine. And if you want to, we can change it after. And you could not have made us feel more comfortable. I was like 2 months postpartum. I had 3 babies in 2 years. And it was just like, I just was not feeling secure. And you made everything such a joy. You are a joy to be around. You're a joy to know. Like, we just can't thank you enough for being here.
You taught us things. We learned.
Yeah, the first thing is the camera loves you both. So you should always have the camera on. And secondly, it's very kind of you to say things like that. But it's I've always found when it comes to things like podcasting or anything like that, you tend to always be out of your comfort zone a little bit. No one ever likes hearing their voice. No one ever likes seeing themselves. So it is a big step especially when you're going to be on somebody else's podcast, because you're even more out of the comfort zone because you're not in the driving seat, if you like. You are basically waiting for the other person to drive it, literally, and you sort of are there to go along with the flow. I've always said that if the one thing that a guest comes out of the podcast saying is that they've had a good time. I don't care whether the things that they say everyone agrees with, or whether they agree with the top 10. It has to be that they've gone away and they've said it's been fun, and that they can go and say to somebody else, I had such a great time on there. Because if you have fun, then I think the listeners and the viewers will have fun. I don't ever want to make anyone feel uncomfortable or do things that they don't want to do. So that, for me, is my job, and I can remember when you guys were saying, we don't really do video, and there's no way that I would push you guys into doing it, because if you're going to be uncomfortable with that, you're not going to be relaxed, when it comes to actually doing the podcast. So, but you were, you're absolutely right. It's weird how when you meet certain people, you know that you're going to be friends, and you know that this is going to be easy. This is going to be just like, we chat every week, and so we're just going to record one of our chats that we've had, and it seemed so natural. It was nothing forced, and it was an absolute joy, and I can't wait to have you back on the Top 10 pod. So
Thanks.
Thanks. We're just so glad that you're here. And
well, I'm glad to.
so we start our podcast with an icebreaker question. And so this one is very personalized to you. If you could have a pint with any Star Wars character, who would it be and why?
Right. You know what? I normally I can come up with things off the top of my head, and I read all the different questions that you asked that I could choose from. This was the first one that I came to, but I've changed my answer so many times over the last couple of days where I've been thinking about it. Because originally I thought it's got to be Chewbacca, okay? And for many reasons. One, you're going to get to the bar first because no one's going to get in Chewie's way, okay? Secondly, once you've had too much to drink and you're staggering around Mos Eisley or you're somewhere in Tatooine and you decide you need to sleep, you've got someone lovely, cuddly and warm to just cuddle up with, like a big blanket, to sleep it off. So that was my first choice. Then I thought, well, no, because what you want to do is you want to have some fun. So you go out with a scoundrel. So Han Solo would be great because you're going to get to chat to the ladies, and maybe get some of his cast-offs. So the ladies are going to go to him, but you just hope, you're the
wingman, huh?
That you're in his proximity. So the ladies that he says, sorry, ladies, they'll look at you and go, well, you're a friend of Han, so, okay, how you doing kind of thing.
That's some street bad.
But then I was also thinking, Jabba the Hutt is the main guy in Tatooine, you see? He's got dancing girls. He's got, he's got the scum and villainy around him. So you go to his place, that there's going to be a punch up, there's going to be a fight, there's going to be a Rancor is going to get fed. So there's going to be some fun things to watch. I think I'm still going to go with Chewie. I think because if Chewie's got your back, and you're going to have a great time. You're going to drink as much blue milk as you want, and I think it'll be a wonderful night. So I'm going to go with Chewie. Yeah.
Love that.
I love how you thought through all of those, and they're all very legitimate answers. In my mind, the thing that you left out of picking Chewie is he could carry you. Not only could you snuggle,
absolutely,
he could carry you.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I love that.
And the thing is, I've thought about this question more than a lot of more important things over the last couple of days, and it shows you how my mind works.
I love that you did that. Thank you.
I love that.
Well, any of those answers are great answers, and I really appreciate that. Given how much thought you put into that, I'll ask a few questions that we've put a lot of thought into, which includes, so you have built a strong audience. I guess we'll start there. What do you think makes a great podcast host? We've talked about why you're great, but what do you think makes a great podcast host?
I think it was what I was saying earlier on. I said the one thing, I've been podcasting now, with Neil it'll be 13 years in April.
Congratulations.
And
wow.
I started podcasting, I can't even remember what year it was. So it would have been a few years before that.
Okay.
And it was a time when it was so hard. You had to know programming to get a podcast, and you had to put it somewhere, take the link from that and put it somewhere else. It was a nightmare when it first started podcasting. But I've always had the same ethos when it came to doing interviews, is that try and not know anything about the person, or not anything, but try and know as least about the person you're interviewing as possible.
So it's authentic.
Exactly. So instead of having a load of facts about the person, especially if it's someone famous, because everybody knows everything about someone that's famous, try and find the little things that nobody knows about, because all you're doing is just regurgitating the same stuff that they've probably been told a million times. If you can go in there and not really know what they've done, some people will say that's very unprofessional. I'm sure they do, that you've got to do some kind of research or whatever. I love discovering things when you're talking to people the same way that the listener's going to. So if you come out with the same questions of, oh, what was it like doing this movie with that person, and what are they like? I mean, I've done that. You still ask those questions, but the listeners already heard those kind of things. If you can find those little nooks and crannies that you can just go in and find these. I did a podcast for our little side series that we're doing at the moment of my top 10 movies with a wonderful actress. She's actually now become a real dear friend of ours, and I recorded it on Wednesday.
Great.
And she will always come up with some golden nuggets of stories on set, and sometimes I have to edit them out because she can go a little bit too far. But it's those little bits that you can get, and I think that's trust as well.
Right.
I think if you can go in, and especially if you're meeting somebody for the first time, I mean, like I said before we started recording, and you can cut this out if you want to, it's like when we met, I thought, and I was trying to remember, are they ladies that swear? I don't think they are. No, I don't think they are. No, I think that they're very good, clean living young ladies that don't like that. So and you've got to I always ask when I'm talking to somebody new, you can swear if you like. I've got no problem with that. You can swear if you like. You've got to be careful because some people don't like that, and if you end up going in the first 5 minutes and it's a way of breaking that trust, so I think and also listening as well. Don't have an ABC 1, 2, 3 list of questions. I know you've got a list of questions, but we can go off on tangents and we can chat about loads of different stuff. When it's just question A, question B, question C, question D, I don't understand the point of that, because you're not letting your guest chat and be human, and then you can react to the things that they're talking about. They can react to you. And I think listening to what your guest is saying is another key thing about podcasting. And there's a few podcasts I listen to where they don't do that. It's all about the host and listen to me, and I'm the star of this, and we have this guest, but it's all about me. And as soon as they ask a question to the guest and the guest gives their point of view, they feel that like that then is their opening to say, well, this is what I think. And I used to do that at the very start. My wife used to listen to the first podcast that we did, and I'd say, oh, what do you think? And she'd say, I'm sick and tired of hearing about what you think. She goes, you ask the question and then you say, oh yeah, but I think this. And she goes, I don't care what you think. I want to hear what your guest thinks. And since then, I mean, my wife's very good. She's very good at being totally brutally honest to me, which sometimes sends me off in the corner crying, holding onto a blanket, sucking my
a mini
thumb.
Chewbacca.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But it's absolutely right, and because the thing is, if you're the person that's on every episode, and sooner or later what you do is end up repeating yourself, because you'll have said something that you said 3 episodes ago, and nobody wants to hear that. The point of you having a guest is they want to hear what your guest is saying. So I've always got that in the back of my mind, that the guest is the star of the episode, and that is why people hopefully will listen, is because they want to hear what my guest has to say. They don't give a toss what I say. It's all about what the guest wants to say, and that's then a thing that I have to do. I have to make sure that the guest is comfortable, is happy, is secure, but then also I have to make sure that they say what they want to say, And at the end of it, if they turn around at the end of it and say, is there any chance you could just edit that bit out? Absolutely. There's no way that I would say, no, that was gold. I'm leaving that in. That's going to be the promo for the episode.
Yeah.
They'll never come back. Do you know what I mean? They'll never come back if you do that. It's all about that trust. So, yeah. A long-winded answer. I'm sorry about that. But
no, it was a great answer.
Nugget. Yeah, great nuggets of wisdom, especially for us. It's helpful for us to think about, too.
Yeah.
I think it comes from experience more than anything else, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's why you're here, because we're novices and you're the pro. So
I wish I was a pro at it. I mean, that's another thing, is like I've been the longevity of it. I mean, there were times, say, when we got to like 8, 9, 10 years, you're thinking, sooner or later it's going to happen where I can quit my job and this is going to be my job. But I've realized now I'm at an age where this is always going to be a hobby, and it's well, I've looked at it that I always think to me everything has to be monetized. So I think to myself, yeah, we don't make, we make enough money so we don't have to pay anything out of our own pocket to put the podcast up, which has always been the root of it. We've always wanted it to be like that. And then you sort of go, oh, yeah, but, we don't make loads of money. 98% of people doing podcasts don't make that kind of money, that they can just say, that's it, I'm now not going to be a podcaster. But I'm not a religious person, but spiritually, what I've got out of podcasts, the laughs that I've got out of podcasts, the people that I've met that are now good friends, including you two, overshadows and outweighs anything that I could have made, monetize or, as a money thing, as a financial thing. So when I look back at it as an overall thing, when I finally, press that record button for the final time, whenever that is, I'll look back on being a podcaster and I've never laughed as much. I've probably never cried as much. The people that I can now say, that I've met, famous or not, has absolutely changed my life, absolutely changed the way I feel about things in a way that if I hadn't have started this in sort of 13 years ago, it's mind-boggling to think of the things that we've managed to do, myself and Neil, and the places we've been and the people that we've met.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
That's so beautiful. Honestly, it's hard to live in a world of capitalism, and everybody's trying to monetize everything. I think that was such a good point. And I think sometimes people, it sounds like from what we've learned so far, and Marissa, you can speak to this too, some people get into podcasting simply to monetize.
Yep.
Some people have multiple podcasts going at the same time. Seriously, don't even know how they can do that. Managing one is a lot. And, offline, we've also talked about social media and how taxing it is to do social media and how sometimes it just doesn't feel like you're getting the connections. But I will say, when we came on your podcast and the chat that we had afterward, it helped to kind of identify whether or not expectations should even be a thing for this. Because the reality for Marissa and I is the reason that we want to do this is because we want to help people and we want to connect to people. And I think that's why you guys do it too. But I think when it comes down to podcasting, it also it's like an expressive way to be creative, but you have so many outlets. There are so many things that I feel like you're doing. You're not just a podcaster. You're not just a singer. You're not just a dad. You're not just a Bampy. You're not just a, you are this full person and you bring that to your podcast. And I think that there's a talent there. And how do you do that? Because not everybody does that. Some people get on their podcast and like you had said, they'll just speak. They won't they just want to hear their own ideas. They just want to send out their message. How do you bring all of you to your podcast?
That's a very good question. So when I started this back in whatever it was, 2012, 2013. Yeah, 2013 it was. So it'll be actually 12 years in April. Like you said on the introduction, that I was taking redundancy from the job that I had. And I was going through, I think I ended up having 6 months off. And the place, the shed is what I call my studio. This literally is the shed at the end of our yard that was full of just crap. It was just full, broken lawnmowers, just everything. And I decided I was going to take it all out and make like a little studio for myself. And I spoke to my brother, and said, "Do you want to do a podcast?" And he poo-pooed it and said, "What do you want to do that for? Why don't you go?" And Neil was my brother's best man at his wedding, and said, "Why don't you go and ask Neil? Why don't you go and ask Neil if he wants to do it?" And I went, "Okay, I will." So we had a chat for about half an hour, and within that half an hour, we had an idea for 2 podcasts. We had one called Movie Heaven, where we would grab a guest, we would ask them this series of questions, culminating in what their movie heaven movie was. You know, the movie that if you had to pick one, sort of like I don't know if you know what Desert Island Discs is in the UK. So that kind of thing. If you had one movie that had to be on a loop for the rest of your life, what movie would it be and why? So we had that one, and we had another one called Live at the Shed, where we would get we had friends that were very good musicians. They came to the shed. They came to this little, I mean, honestly, it's a tiny little shed, and play a couple of songs for us, and then we'd ask them questions, and we had some amazing, I mean, again, that went on for a while. We ended up doing, I think I counted 13 different podcasts as Pancast PODuctions, all in various, some of them were like one-off ones. When we first started it, I was podcasting Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights. We did like a radio style show with our great friend Loz, and it was like morning zoo radio. It was 2 guys and 1 girl. You can still hear them on Mixcloud. I think they're still up on Mixcloud. And I cringe sometimes because they're not very PC, I tell you. But we, honestly, Thursday nights we had it in here, again, pardon my French, but we would be wetting ourselves because we would come up with ideas, and I used to do voices, and I used to do Elvis impersonations, and we would just be crying with laughter because the stuff that we would do, and we would have it on Facebook Live, and we had so much fun, but we'd always do different kinds of, and the one thing I'm a bit of a junkie for is starting new podcasts. I love the whole process of starting new podcasts, getting thumbnails, getting intro music, getting all of that kind. I love all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So when we first started it, everything, learning, editing, uploading stuff, it was all just self-taught. It was the sleepless nights I had when I didn't have a job because I would finish something in here and it wasn't quite right, and I had to go to bed because I was tired. It ended up becoming just something I had to do. So I ended up having 3 or 4 months of getting this ready, getting guests booked. And again, I had no idea. You're very professional. You send out a letter, an email with this is what we're going to do, blah, blah. Never did that. It was always just going on to Twitter or Instagram and getting hold of somebody. And I always found things like Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, was amazing for getting famous guests. Because if you could see somebody that had just tweeted, like they tweeted 23 seconds ago, then you would reply to a tweet and say, hey, do you fancy being a guest on our podcast? And sometimes they would read it, and then they would message, and then or they would follow you, and all of a sudden you can DM them, and then and there's only been one person. There was a British actor that who actually, funnily enough, lives in the town that I live in. So I sometimes see him walking around town. And the only thing that ended up his agent ended up then contacting us, and I said, "Yeah, would he be a guest on our podcast?" And they said, "How much?" And I went, "Well, nothing, because we're a tiny little podcast. We can't afford to pay." But the amount of when I say famous, they're like famous in the UK. We've had, although Armando Iannucci, do you know Armando Iannucci? Probably don't know. He does Alan Partridge, if you know who Alan Partridge is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he's the guy that with Steve Coogan created Alan Partridge. He was just tweeting on Twitter one day, and I managed to get there, and then the next minute I was editing in here, and all of a sudden it clicked up, Armando Iannucci is following you. I went, oh my God. And my mouth went all dry, and I messaged him, and I said, would you be a guest on our This Country podcast? And he went, he said, yeah, absolutely no problem. You'll need to let me know sort of when you want to do it. And I go, blah, blah, blah. Because I started off, when he said that, I thought, what's the etiquette here? He's just followed me. I can't message him straight away because that just looks desperate. So I need to be a bit cool. You know, just hang back a little bit. So I'm
So
hanging back.
podcasting is like dating celebrities, huh? No, I'm teasing.
But it is, because it was like, if I go straight in there, that's too desperate. If I wait an hour, he's going to be
You
off
might
and he's going to
lose
be
him.
gone. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and it worked out perfectly. Paul Feig, the Hollywood director,
Oh,
we got hold
love
of
him.
him. And so it's things like that you get to be able to do those kind of things from just having, clearing your shed out and getting a computer. And I've always said to people, if you want to go and do a podcast, but this was when not everybody was doing a podcast.
Right.
Yeah, right. The
The
market's
Movie
kinda
Heaven
saturated.
podcast was on the front page of Apple Podcasts all the time.
Oh my
All
gosh.
the time. Yeah, all the time. And it was like, oh my God. But then that was at a point when it didn't really mean anything. But then COVID was great.
Mhm.
Well, that's
No,
a
no.
quote, isn't it? COVID was COVID, for somebody who produces podcasts, COVID was great because you could get hold of famous people because you knew they weren't doing anything. They were sat at home. So
That's
we managed
smart.
to get some sort of famous British actors and comedians and people like that, because you just got all of them on Twitter then, and you could work it out. But the trouble is, as well, everybody decided to do a podcast. Z-list celebrities, and they all got their little black books with famous people, and all of a sudden it just got swamped. So
Yeah.
it was a wonderful thing in regards to being able to get hold of people, but it also saturated the podcast world with all of these uncelebrities that are just all doing exactly the same thing, all having exactly the same guests on, and then podcasts like ours are the ones that get sort of pushed down and pushed down and pushed down. And it always grinds my gears when you hear these guys say that we're an independent podcast, and I'm thinking, no, you're not. You've got
Right.
producers, you've got editors, you've got people that are booking your guests, you've got all the people, you've got a nice studio that you walk in, do your podcast, and walk away and go off and do other things. You are not an independent podcast at all. What we do is nuts and bolts independent. So, but to answer your question, it's, look, I'm a great actor. Okay, is what I'm going to say. I am the least confident person you will ever meet. Okay, the person that is up there singing and the person that is doing this when the camera's on, I would love to be that guy 100% of the time, and I'm not. And I'm not. I don't mean that it means that what I'm doing is insincere. When the camera's on, this is the person that I would love to be. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes
It's
sense.
showtime,
You're
right?
Sasha Fierce.
Yeah.
You're
There you
Beyonce.
go.
She's got her on stage personality, Sasha Fierce. I got it. You're
Exactly.
Sasha
But
Fierce.
you cannot. It's physically impossible for you to be like that all the time. And it's one of the things. It's one of my deepest regrets, and I do get emotional about this sometime, in the fact that my wife, bless her, we've been married. It'll be 31 years in April. We've been married.
Wow,
And
congratulations.
congratulations to her. Absolutely. And I mean that in a way that I'm a pain in the ass. Not that she's she's won in life because she's got me. I mean, because she has to put up with me. But she has to put
Sasha.
up. She has to put up with, pardon my French, the shitty end of the stick. She has to put up with me when I'm moody, when I'm tired. Whereas when I'm out singing or when I'm doing this, you can't be like that. You have to be, hey, how you doing? Hey, all of that. You have to be the cheeky chappy, the one that everybody loves. And my wife gets that sometimes, but she doesn't get it all the time, And I feel that is also something that when it comes to the time when I finish doing all of this kind of stuff, that I hope that this person is the person that will take over, and my wife will get the benefit of that guy more.
Delayed gratification, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's, if I'm like this all the time, with her all the time, she's going to hate it. She doesn't like that. She likes it when I'm moody and she can storm off and then she has a bit of time to herself. She doesn't want me to be, ultra positive and hey, how you doing all the time. She's not going to like that at all. But it's, in the end, I think everybody has to put a face on when it comes to doing this. You cannot go up in front of an audience, whether it's singing or whether it's doing this, and go, hi guys, how's everyone doing? Yeah, I'm not had a good day today, but anyway, here's the top 10 of anything. You can't do it like that. You have to
sounds like you're in a support group and not the kind that's like uplifting and motivating and you want to be there, but it's more like you have to be there. That said, there's a place and time for that, and I hear you, and I think that it's so nice that your wife, like, you can be yourself with your wife, because not trying to throw you under the bus lane, but I know mom and dad would get teacher's notes and be like, oh, your daughters are such a joy to be around, and then they're like, my kids? Are you serious?
Yeah,
because there's like a time and place, context. So I hear you, Pav. We're yes, but and please continue.
No, I was just. I couldn't. No, go on, Elaine, again.
No, I was gonna say, I saw. This is gonna sound so random. I saw Machine Gun Kelly on the Drew Barrymore show. Did you guys see this? If you haven't seen it, I'm gonna send it to you both. And he came on and he was like, my publicist is going to kill me. He had this new nail line come out or whatever. And he was sitting there and you can just tell that he wasn't right. Like, he just wasn't in a good place. And so he's like, I'm really sorry. I'm having a bad day. My publicist is going to kill me for saying this. But he was like, some days I have really good days and some days. And he's painting her nails. And she is totally engrossed in what he's saying. And if you know anything about Drew Barrymore, who I love her because she is always authentic. If she's having a bad day, if she's having a good day, if she's, got a message, if she's talking about her kids and how hard parenting is and all this stuff, that's why I'm captivated by her. And Machine Gun Kelly's sitting there in this interview and he's talking and he's expressing himself and he's talking about how hard life can be sometimes. And I think so often about, like, things have happened to both Marissa and I recently, and we got on here and we met with new people and we so enjoyed it. It's like a little slice of heaven doing this. And I think that's what you're saying too, Pav, is like, it really is. There's something that leans into the best sides of us because it gives us joy. And I think that's more so what it is than even like turning on or turning off, because this piece of you is the only piece of you that we know, which also makes me curious about the moody version of you, because like I want to be around that guy too. But all to
take it
say
out on the golf balls.
Yeah.
Yes.
But like it's all to say that, like, I think one thing that we also talk about in terms of like neurodiversity and things like that too is masking. And I don't think that's what you're talking about, but I do think the neurodivergent community does talk about it. And they talk about, like, you go into school or you go into like a traditional place, like your job or whatever. And if you're having a bad day, society tells you the show must go on.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's something that I so want to unlearn. But at the same time, I understand what you're talking about. Like, if we got on here and we just started crying, or if we just started talking about whatever happened to us that day that was impacting our mood, so we weren't like flicking the light switch, it might not bring the audience in. No. But I do think those moments of authenticity are so needed in a podcast. But I'm still learning where they fit. So, like, do you remember a time where you had like a really authentic moment that made you feel vulnerable, that maybe showed a different side of you?
Well, it's funny you should say. I mean, I've suffered from depression quite a lot over the last few years, to the point where I've had to have time off work for weeks at a time. And the last time that happened was what would have been, I don't know, a year or so ago. And here's the weird thing. The first thing I thought of doing was starting a podcast. So I started a podcast because for me, I call it that. I know when I'm going to have one of those moments. I had another one for a day or two at the start of the year. I get to work, and all of a sudden, I know I'm in trouble, and it's there. And I call it the Big Black Bear is what I call it. So I started a podcast called the Big Black Bear Podcast, where I was talking to people that I knew that suffered from it. I only ended up doing about 12 or 13 episodes, but it was a way of kind of sort of confronting it myself, but also knowing that I'm not the only one. But it's a really strange feeling that I know that this big black bear's got his claws on my shoulders, and there's nothing I can do about it. And the weird thing is, my wife, who I love her to bits, I love her dearly, but she can be very, very, come on, get on with it, brush yourself off, get on with it, get to work. And she's been very much like that. If I've got the flu, if I'm feeling like I've got a bad cold, she won't talk to me for 2 weeks if I have a day off work, because she's like, just get on with it and get to work. But there was one time when I broke down in front of her at the dining room table, and she realized that there was something. Hang on, no, he's not. Either he is a really good actor, or there's something really wrong. And since then, whenever I'm having these little wobbles, she will come up and she will say, "You okay? Is everything all right?" And I will either say, "Yeah, I'm fine," or I'll break down. And it gets to the point where she is now saying, if you feel like that, you just need to let it wash over you. Don't try and fight it and push it away. Just let it take you over. Get what you need to get out, and then you can get on with it. And that worked so much easier than me trying to fight it and trying to fight this bear and get him out of the way, because he's gonna be there. It doesn't matter what I do or what I say. And there is no triggers to it. There's no like, oh, somebody's died or something's happened. I can be the happiest. Like, I've got no. Like, the last time that it majorly happened, there was nothing. There was no triggers. I just went for a walk before I went to work, and I was walking down this canal. It was a beautiful day, this lovely canal I was walking past, and I just burst into tears, and I thought, I am in deep, deep trouble. So here we go again. And I went to work, and somebody said, "You're not right, are you?" I said, "No." They said, "Just go home." Looking back, that was probably the worst thing you could do. Rather than being at work and letting that fill your mind, you go home, you go to bed, and you're just constantly thinking about it. So it ends up, the mind is such a weird thing. But what you said, Elena, doing this and doing a podcast is a way of breaking that up. Even if you've had a really bad day, come and chat to some people for an hour and a half, have a laugh. It can make the world a difference. You still got to go back out of here and then face the life, normal life. But for that hour and a half, it's kind of like going through the back of the wardrobe and going into Narnia, and you have this beautiful world where what's out there doesn't matter, because what's here really matters for that hour and a half or whatever it is. And then you got to edit it, and then you got to put it up, and that's where it becomes a pain in the ass.
I love that you're like as a means to cope with what was going on, that you gave other people a space too. Like, you didn't just let it stick with you. And I hope it meant that you didn't feel as alone per se. But wow, when I feel my low moments, my instinct wouldn't be, oh, let me go find other, like, it's just as, and I think society kind of shaped this for me. It's like almost, I want to destigmatize the shame that can feel when you have a low moment or a weak moment. And I appreciate that what you did for however many people and for however long, I think you said it was 13 episodes. I'm going to go listen to the Big Black Bear, because although I don't know that, like, it's almost like as you were talking about it, it was like a Patronus. I mean, converse, it was like a Dementor. It was like a Dementor, but shaped like a big black bear. I don't know what mine would look like, but I definitely can appreciate everything that you just said. And I also think that your wife learning to give you the space to react and do what you need to do. Wow. there's so few people that have like that level of support or that safe space. I applaud. I hope I get to meet your wife at some point, because I applaud that approach, and I'm going to need to use that with my own son, who's been having some major emotional mood swings, and I'm sure it's just like part of growing up. But he's nonverbal, and so it's really challenging because he can't vocalize what's going on. And my thing is, I want to fix this for you. I want to fix this for you, but I can't. I can't.
No, and the thing, I don't think you can. My son suffers a lot from it, and I tend to then get guilty because I'm thinking he's seen how I am and he thinks that that's the way, you know, you just have to feel down, you know. And the thing is with the Big Black Bear podcast, I spoke to friends, Loz, who I mentioned earlier on, and for the first 3 or 4 episodes, the guests that I had, they all cried, and it made me feel like so bad. But they said after we finished recording, they said they felt so much better, that they were able to get it out. And my whole point of starting the podcast wasn't to make people cry, but they would just come out with you know, things that had affected them in their life or how they're feeling now, and they were just able to get it off their chests. And it was beautiful. But I felt so guilty that I thought, no, you're my friends and I love you, and the last thing I want to do is make you cry. But they come out with stuff that just broke your heart, you know, and I think everybody's got that pain, but some people are very good. My wife is amazing at compartmentalizing things. Things upset her, but she's able to take it, lock it away, get on with what she needs to do. And she never shows me. Sometimes, no, don't. Oh, that's wrong. Sometimes she will show like emotion, but I wish I could do that. I think I could get so much more done in my life. You know, like I said, I cry at a Taylor Swift song, you know, because that's kind of, I'm terribly emotional about everything. And I wish I'm at one end of the scale. My wife is, I mean, that's probably why we've lasted so long together, is because we are completely different. When we're two halves of something, you know, as opposed to being, I think if we were both really emotional, we probably would have lasted 6 months. And if we were both really sort of the same the other way, we probably would have lasted 3 months. So it's that thing of, like I said before, is that like the brain and your mental health is such a complicated, complex thing that everybody's different and everybody needs different things. But I don't think there's no fast or hard rule to it at all.
So it's interesting that you said, well, everything you said is interesting, but on my brain, there's a monkey that lives up there with a top hat and a spectacle, and he's British, by the way.
There you go then.
He runs things up there. I've talked about him a couple of times.
The British monocled top hat monkey podcast. That's what you need to do.
It should at least be on a shirt somewhere. Like,
Agreed.
He really should. And ironically,
Agreed.
I identify as female. He identifies as male. So there you go. But anyway, I do some of the things that I was thinking about while you were talking is there's like these interwoven pieces of humanity and norms in society that have different impacts on people. Like biologically, scientifically, we know that every single brain is different. Every single one. We know that the structures are typically the same, but we know that every single one is different. And it's different not only because of genetics, not only because of the people and the communities we're in, not only because of the people who raised us. It's just life, right? And I think that it's interesting that people, and even in my own life, can have such different perspectives on mental health. And I think that there's a lot of unlearning that still needs to happen. And I think the best place to do that is in spaces that you're safe in. And I just wonder, for the Big Black Bear podcast, you talked about you had friends. So maybe you had already established that. But talking about mental health is a very emotional thing. We actually just talked about this on the first episode for this season about how learning is emotional. And it is. There's joy, there's pain, there's sorrow, there's grief, there's happiness, there's everything in between. So how, for the Big Black Bear podcast, did you create a safe space?
I think it goes with what I was saying earlier on about what you need to do to be a podcast host. It's all those same things. It's I mean, it helped that the majority of the people that I spoke to are people that I class as friends, even though a couple of them are people that I've met through podcasting as opposed to actual personal friends. We spoke to a couple of like experts as well, but I mean, even Neil, I spoke to Neil because Neil had been through so much over the last couple of years. He had a bad accident. What was it? Two Christmases ago, which has affected his life now until the rest of his life. So that was, to be fair, that was the most emotional one, because he said that he'd written the letter that he was going to leave on his like front door, and it was only because like his mum and dad's dog started barking that he thought, okay, no. But he's and it's something like that with somebody that you love so much. You think, oh my God, I've always made sure that I was there for him. So I feel like the safe space was already there because we're friends, with the majority of the people. I was friends with the majority of the people, and that hopefully they trust me. I always said to them that you only share what you want to share. I'm not here to get like gratuitous details or anything, but I think it becomes that thing like I've done. You start. I mean, I'm sure that if my wife listens to this, she'll say, "What the bloody hell are you doing saying this, that, and the other?" Do you know what I mean? So it gets to that point where you have to. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's all in the edit. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it is that thing of, if I felt that something that they'd said was too personal, I would take it out. But it's trust. It's just that trust. That's the safe space, I think. It's the trust between you and them, maybe you and your audience as well. Because I've very rarely, I think we've only, in all of the years I've been podcasting, we've had one email of complaint. So which isn't bad considering some of the crap we used to say. So to have one email where somebody emailed saying that they didn't like the way that me and Loz picked on Neil, and the following week all he was doing was going, oh, boo-hoo Neil, oh, poor Neil. So he was like taking the mickey out of him even more. But again, it's all done, everybody knows that everybody loves each other. It's not done through malice or whatever. So I think that's what I think it's trust. The only way to really have a safe space is if they trust, your guests trust you, and if you trust them, and your audience trusts you that you're going to do the right thing. Because I'm pretty sure if I started being an ass to guests, we wouldn't get people listening. Because why would they wouldn't want to listen to that. There are people that like doing, they have that kind of shtick. That's their kind of thing where they're going to be, and maybe it is detrimental. Maybe you would get more listeners. Maybe you would get more clicks. Maybe you would get more views. So then in turn, you might get more opportunity to make more money if you did that. And I've turned away from being, as you can tell, being a Star Wars fan. I think there's never been a more horrible time to be a Star Wars fan, because it is so divisive now, and I've turned off of watching people's videos on YouTube, because the only way they get massive clicks is when they're saying about how bad everything is, whether it's Disney, whether it's the new Snow White movie, or whether it's all the wokeism, whether it's all of that kind of stuff. The only way that you get clicks now is if you're saying how bad everything is. How you're saying the new Star Wars thing is rubbish, and this is rubbish, and don't go and watch that because it's woke, or because it's this, or because it's that. And in the end, I love Star Wars because, again, it took me to a galaxy far, far away. Do you know what I mean? It's
We do.
Those first three movies, I can remember watching the first movie when I was 7 years old. No, I would have been 8 years old, sorry. And in this horrible flea pit cinema in a seaside town, when we'd gone on holiday, we were camping in this little sort of like, it was just, we went every year because that's what we did for holidays. And it was a little cinema, but I can remember my dad driving us back to the campsite afterwards, and I thought I was Luke Skywalker in an X-wing. I was, do you know what I mean? I was like, I was Luke Skywalker. And that movie, or those movies, the first three especially, are in my DNA. That's who I am. So it is disheartening with the fact that, well, you see, it's not. I'm talking myself out of this. It's not disheartening because those movies will always be there, and they'll always. And it doesn't
Yes.
matter how much George Lucas messes with them and changes them and puts little bits in them. Those movies will always mean more to me than anything else.
Mm.
What they keep adding to it shouldn't change my opinion because those movies will never change. They're always there. But I can remember when I went and saw episode 9 at the midnight showing for the first time, as I did with all of the movies, whether it was episode 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. I went and saw episode 9, and I was so disappointed with it. So I came out of the cinema, and the first thing I remember, I made a video to put on one of our YouTube channels asking the question, oh my God, is Star Wars just a movie? I'd never thought of that before. I'd never thought of Star Wars as just a movie before until episode 9 came out because it was so bad. And I thought, oh my God. And it was like a religious experience. It was like, oh my
Your world
God,
shattered.
God doesn't exist. Oh my God. Star Wars had never been just a movie for me.
Well, does going to have you been to the Star Wars world at Disney?
Oh yes, I have,
Okay.
my dear.
So
Oh my God.
has that
Yes.
shifted
Can you see the
your
lightsabers up there?
Yeah, yeah. Are
Oh
those
my God.
personally made? They weren't like
My
pre-manufactured. You
bank
made your
manager
own.
knows that I've been to Galaxy's Edge. I'll tell you that for a fact.
Okay, well, so has that helped change your perspective? Like, made it more real instead? Like, because it went from infallible to then fallible in an hour, or
It did.
probably 3.
It did.
But
Well,
yeah.
we went the first time in 2019, and we went
Okay.
to Orlando with my daughter, her boyfriend at the time, and my grandson, and my mum and dad. And we'd spent probably the year before that watching videos, and Galaxy's Edge was opening. I think it was that year, but like a few months before we went, it opened. And I'd literally walked every step of Galaxy's Edge on YouTube videos. And it got to the point when we got there, and I'm gonna cry. I'm genuinely gonna cry because that moment I walked through the arch and burst into tears because I don't know if you know about Galaxy's Edge, but everybody in there is in character. They don't work for Disney. They live in Batuu, which is what Galaxy's Edge is. So
Okay.
I'm walking through this arch, and I've only seen it on videos. And I think my daughter took a video of me like crying like an 8-year-old. Like I
I'm
was
gonna
back
need
to
that.
yeah,
I'm gonna need that.
yeah. And my dad is looking at me like, "What the f- are you doing? You're 50 years old and you're crying like a babe. What is wrong with you?" And this was
Nothing.
before, yeah, exactly. But this is so I'm walking around again. It was magical, absolutely magical. And then you walk around the corner, and the Millennium Falcon is there in front of you, full size Millennium Falcon. I literally had an out of body experience. It was like, even now I've been now twice to
Okay.
Batuu East, which is Orlando, and I've been once to Batuu West, which is in California.
California.
And every time, it doesn't matter. I spent on the first day, the first time we went, I spent another $200 to stay in one of the Disney hotels on my own, so that I could go at the sort of like rope drop to get to Galaxy's Edge the following day, just to be able to be there on my own and wander. And then I spent an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, watching the sun go down, just sat in front of the Millennium Falcon. That's all. And if there's a place that I could be buried, that's where I want to be. I want to spend my last moments on this earth with the sun going down in front of the Millennium Falcon. And that, for me, I just thought, Chewie, I'm home. It's what I
Oh
thought.
my god!
Honestly,
Chills.
and if anybody is even a 10% fan of Star Wars, I would say to them, please just go to Galaxy's Edge. I had the plan that I wanted to get that one. I wanted to get Luke's lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. That's what I wanted. And I also, it's not there. It's over the other side. I made my own lightsaber, which you can go in and have made. You choose your kyber crystal. Again, there's a moment, spoilers for anybody that is going to do this, but there's a whole show. There's a guy there telling you what it all means, and then you choose your bits and you put it all together.
Wild.
And then Yoda starts talking. Like it just starts talking, and I'm like my tears are streaming down my face while Yoda's there. And again, I think I've put it's up on YouTube. I'll send you the links to me putting it up.
Good.
So then we go into I go into the shop, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm never going to get back here again. I'm not, this is a one and done. I didn't realize I was going to get back to Galaxy's Edge again. I ended up walking away with 6 lightsabers. I ended up
one for each front pocket, one for each back pocket.
It was ridiculous. I had to leave clothes there and shoes there so I could get them all in my suitcase.
How heavy are they? That's a burning question for me.
They pack some weight. Okay.
Like how many newborn babies?
This one, I mean, my grandkids, especially Finn, my little boy, will come up and say, "Bampy, can I play with one of your lightsabers?" No, they're not toys. Just leave them alone. But you can put blades in them, and they make noise, and they do the whole wow. So,
do they end like do they end like a normal lightsaber does?
Well, you have to put a blade.
Okay.
In the end, yeah, you have to put.
Yep. No, give us a tutorial.
Hang on a sec. So this is the lightsaber that I made.
Oh wow!
So yeah, so what you do is you unscrew, you get to choose different pieces, and then you can put them all together, and then, like I say, it's all a massive. It's a story thing that they do, and then you put the blade in there, and then you can turn it on, and it's again, all of it is just a magical experience. And I was very, very, very lucky when my friends took me to or brought me over to LA last year. They took me to Disneyland, so we went, and they bought me the Darksaber. So they bought me the lightsaber from the Mandalorian, and so I've been very, very blessed. But it's, like I say, it's a magical place. We're planning on going back again, hopefully next year sometime. And I might make another lightsaber. I don't know. But it becomes, but like you say, walking around there, everything you love about Star Wars, everything I loved about Star Wars was there, because it was just real. Everything was, you can't see any other part of the park. So once you're in there, you're in Star Wars, and there's characters walking around, and there's sounds, and it's a like I say, it's the place I want to die. If I could choose a place to die, in front of the Millennium Falcon with the sun going down, I could stay there like all the time. So it's
I hope in my whole life I find a place that you love as much as that, but I also hope someone speaks as nicely about me as you did about Galaxy's Edge.
I feel like that should be a meme we create. I hope someone loves me as much as Pav loves Galaxy's Edge.
And the thing is, I mean, I know that my wife and like my dad and that they spent half a day walking around. They were done. They'd seen everything, done everything, and sort of like, yeah, okay, I don't need to do that anymore. And I knew that like they would be like that. That's why I decided. I said to my wife, I'm going to stay at, like, I think it was the Dolphin or the Swan Hotel. She goes, "Oh, that's nice. What are we going to do?" I said, "No, I'm going to stay there so I can get into Galaxy's Edge early the next day." She went, "Okay, go on then. If that's what you need to do." And then, of course, when she saw me and I had like 3 bagfuls of stuff and like my fingers are nearly being cut off by the carrier bags that I'm holding because she said, "What have you done?" I said, "There's nothing I could do about it." I said, they called to me. And if I'd known that we were going to be going back like a couple of years later, then I wouldn't have got like all those lightsabers then.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
But
You gotta savor the experience. Yeah, right.
To have you both on at the same time. I'm learning so much today.
oh gosh, yeah. That'd be trouble.
I also know that you have multiple. So you made your own, and I know you have Luke's, and I know you have now a dark side one. Since you love the lightsaber so much, do you name them?
I don't. No, I don't name them, but I do sort of. If anybody, sometimes, when my daughters have had their boyfriends, they'll come in and they'll say, "Oh, you should see my dad's shed. You know, he's got some stuff in here." So I'll open it up and they'll have a little look and they'll see the helmets and they'll see the lightsabers, and then sometimes they will go, "Which one's that?" I say, "Oh, that's Obi-Wan Kenobi's from the Phantom Menace." "Oh, right, okay. Which one's that?" "Well, that's Kylo Ren's from." So you do sort of. I don't actually have.
That's Pav's.
Yeah. Well, this one's mine.
And this is Pav's.
This one's
this
mine.
is also Pav's.
Yeah.
And this
But
is also Pav's.
It is and that thing. There are times my grandson Finn. He is my weakness. He is kind of. Again, it was a beautiful summer, the year that he was. So he was born in the January. And that summer was a beautiful summer, but I had a real bad mental dip, and I ended up being at home for 5 or 6 weeks, and I was looking after him on my own for 5 or 6 weeks. And I don't mean to be dramatic. I don't mean it in a way that I would have done anything, but I felt like he kind of saved my life that summer. And we had a real bond, or I had a real bond with him. And I love that little boy. I mean, I love all my grandkids, obviously, but I love him so much because at a time when I was really, really low, and he was only 6 months old, it wasn't, but he so saved me, if you like. So I'm terrible because he'll come in and now he's, I don't know, what is he, 6 or 7 now? He'll come in and he'll say, "That's nice, Bumpy. What's that?" And I'll say, "Oh, it's a little pop figure of, oh, can I have it?" "Yeah, go on then, you can have it." So he's slowly
asking for your truck or your car.
He's slowly
or whatever.
moving stuff off. But then when he starts talking about the lightsabers, I'll go, "Off, no, you ain't having them." No, get away.
There is a line.
He has said to me, he said, "Bumpy, can I have that helmet? Can I have that helmet?" I said, "I'll tell you what." I said, "I'm going to write your name inside it." I said, "So when I'm gone, I will pass that on to you." And he said to me, "When's that going to be then, Bumpy?"
Love it.
I said, "Well, hopefully not for a long, long time." And he went, "Oh." So
This makes it so funny.
Oh,
You can wear this at your wedding, Finn.
Yeah, right, exactly. No, but so I'm not quite sure what the timing pieced out, but I had my oldest in 2020, and it was November of 2020, and everything was still very much in chaos, spiraling down. We hadn't stabilized. There was no vaccines, and you had pods of people. I hear you on. I very much think my oldest son, his name is Miles, saved me from despair because it was very lonely. And,
he saved all of us.
Yeah,
He saved our
and he
whole
was the
family.
first
He really did.
he was the first grandkid, and because of their young age, they don't know all the chaos and all the despair. So when they giggle or when something makes them laugh, it could be the stupidest thing. It could be a fart.
yeah.
And then they smile, and then that makes you smile. It could be bubbles. At that point in time, he loved anything that spin, and he loves bubbles. And I used to say, I wish I loved anything the way that my son loves spinning things and bubbles. And I actually saw a movie recently. It's The Unbreakable Boy. It's about a child with autism who also has OI, which I can't remember. Essentially, it like is broken bones, like a very fragile bones. And that boy loves strawberry milkshakes. It's a true story. He's alive, and he loves strawberry milkshakes, and that's the thing that brings him so much passion. For you, it sounds like it might be lightsabers.
I think it is.
I think maybe the closest thing for me might be moose, which I have been fascinated with moose.
The animal.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Correct.
Not like for her hair. Or chocolate mousse to eat.
Great point.
It's an
Thank
animal.
you. Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate the context. Yes, the moose, the animal. And it's like a bucket list item to like see one in its natural habitat. I've only ever seen one in the zoo, or like a stuffed one that was dead on a wall, right? Like I really want to see one.
Stuffed.
I just like that might be the most exciting thing outside of my family, but like I hear you on. I'm so glad you had him, and there's like this special bond that won't ever leave you, because in a time like you have emotions now tied to this person.
Yeah.
You happy memories in a time that very few things felt happy, and that will never leave you. And I'm so glad that you have that person. And Finn, regardless of whether he knows it or not, is lucky that he had you during that time as well.
Well, I think because the thing is, I always hope that whether it's my kids or whether it's my grandkids, that I'm not. I try and make it that I'm not like a normal dad or a granddad. You know, I don't. I dress like a geek. Like, you know, I don't dress like a 55-year-old. I dress, you know, I'm basically like that sort of poster child for the nerd, you know, that's in his basement with a computer, that's with a beard and wearing silly t-shirts and silly caps. And I've always wanted. I think that's why things like podcasting and singing and you know, writing songs or doing any kind of thing, I like being is creative. I've always wanted to be creative. Because I think once you stop being creative, I think things in your brain start seizing up.
They literally do. No, they scientifically do.
Old. You start becoming old. You know, and I feel, of course, I things that I could do with losing a few pounds, and I know that that's something that's on my list that I need to do, but it becomes that thing of like, it's the creative kind of side of things can be tiring, you know, because you're constantly trying to not be normal. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it.
Yes.
You know, I don't want to be somebody that goes to work, comes home, has something to eat, watches an hour of TV, goes to bed, gets up, and rinse and repeat, and do that over and over again. So as much as I've had a crisis of confidence at the start of this year that I wanted to maybe, you know, quit singing and quit doing podcasts, because it's so much, especially the podcasting, and the social media side of it is the stuff I hate. I wouldn't be on social media if it wasn't for the fact I had a podcast, because you have to do it. You have to have it. Because what ends up then is you end up spending hours just scrolling through stuff, even though all I wanted to do was put a post up about the podcast. You get caught in it, you know, and I would, if there was a way of podcasting, it's just, you can't do it without social media. Otherwise, nobody knows that you got a show, or nobody knows that you got a new episode coming out. There's no growth there, but it's it's tiring. But at the same time, if it means that my kids or my grandkids, when they're talking to their mates, they go, yeah, my Bamp is really cool because he does this and he does that. Or my kids will sometimes come up and see me sing, and that's when it's really hard. It's really hard to sing when you've got your kids there singing the songs back to you. And when it comes to stuff like that, and I start choking and I can't sing properly because
your kids sound nice. We'd heckle.
They are. I mean, bless them. They are all. I mean, my youngest is 23, so it's like they're not kids, if you know what I mean, you know. And
but they are at the same time.
but they are, and my middle daughter is expecting, and she's got a baby coming in July.
Oh,
And that again is
congratulations.
going to be another amazing. I love being a granddad. I love being a vampy. It's the greatest job in the world, because you get to give them back, which is so good. It is so wonderful, because you know you enjoy. We've always had it. My mum has always been the same with our kids. That they used to make a point of. It wasn't the fact they never said no, but it was always a treat to go and see my mum and dad, and they've got an amazing relationship with my kids. It's like and now that they're old enough that they can have a drink together and, you know, party together, because my mum and dad are very, very young. My dad's 75, considering I'm 55, and my mum is 72, so they're relatively young considering with how old I am. So they've got these kids that absolutely idolize them, and the grandkids, all as well. And it is beautiful. And as much as nobody's perfect, so they've all got their foibles, and they can all fall out with each other and all of that kind of stuff. I'm very, very, very lucky to have the family that I've got. Which again, then it's the whole thing about the mental health and depression. When it comes to that, I've got. It's not like I can say, I was treated badly as a child. I didn't. I had a wonderful, wonderful, loving sort of upbringing. We weren't on the breadline, but but then we weren't like massively rich. We never had holidays overseas. It was always camping or going to holiday camps and things like that. But there was always love. My mum especially always made sure that there were hugs, and that's one thing that we've carried on, is that I will always, whenever I see any of my kids, I don't care how old they are, I'll always give them a kiss and a hug, even if it's my son. And we'll always, when we're messaging each other, it will be "love you" with a kiss.
Aw.
There's never ever, if they don't put "love you," I'll send another message. And oh yeah, love you, Dad. Yeah. So it's sometimes maybe it'll be classed as, because I do think that might be a reason why I'm such a pussy when it comes to emotions, is that I was enveloped in this love, whereas my wife didn't have that. My wife didn't have that kind of thing. And she always said that when she came at the start of our relationship, it's a little bit off-putting with everybody hugging each other. And when you haven't got that in your life, it's kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? This is weird. Where she's kind of now, she'll make sure that she gives the grandkids a hug, and I mean, I've never hugged my mother-in-law. And she's just not that kind of person, and that's what my wife was brought up with, whereas I was brought up with the complete opposite again. So it's
Elena and I can actually really relate to that.
On like a total, like, we have quite a, I don't know, array of humans when it comes to family dynamics and physical touch and saying I love you and all of those things. There's cultural pieces to it too, but we grew up in a family similar to yours, and I think there's a lot of really interesting things that I feel like have come up in the conversation where I'm wondering, because you're in the UK and we're in the United States, it sounds like there are a lot of similarities when people talk about mental health, but there are also a lot of like differences in stigma and in language and things like that like I'm super curious about. But Marissa and I, part of the reason we were laughing is because we know that both her husband and my husband, when they came into our family, it was real awkward for them at first. Not just because of the way that they were raised, kind of like what you're saying, but there is a stigma in the United States that I think people are working really hard to go against, which is that men shouldn't cry, men shouldn't be emotional. And I do wonder if that's like a global thing now that I'm thinking about it. But like, I find, again, going back to authenticity, like, it's also really interesting too, because I'm thinking about my husband in particular and Marissa's husband. And over the years, like, they are so loving and kind and warm and compassionate, but with us, like with our side of the family, as opposed to maybe even their own sometimes. And again, it's not a criticism, it's just the way that things are. But we've also seen the other sides of our families change over time too, and find the value in authenticity and find the value in time. There just isn't enough of it, and find the value in love and saying it and expressing it. But similarly to what you're talking about with your in-law family, like, the family dynamics of it can be challenging, and also people's approaches to mental health. So what is something that you wish was destigmatized in mental health in the UK?
Well, I think that the trouble, especially with the British, is their whole point is stiff upper lip, and that kind of keep calm and carry on. All of those kind of sayings and slogans that is supposed to be very British. It is that thing of I completely agree. It is that thing that a man shouldn't cry, and I think it's a generational thing. That whole point of me walking through that arch at Galaxy's Edge and I'm crying, and my dad is looking at me and he doesn't understand why I'm crying. It doesn't compute in his mind on why I would act like that, why I would be emotional about this, and he stands there as if I'm speaking a different language that he doesn't understand. So I think excuse me, I think the stigmatization, is that even a word? I don't know, but the stigma of keeping a stiff upper lip and keep calm and carry on is the thing that's wrong with Britain. I think in the end, whether it's UK or the US, we're exactly the same. Apart from the fact that you've got cooler accents than I have, but
agree to disagree on that.
But it is, I think, in the end, when you boil everything down, everybody is the same. Everybody wants the same, but I think it's just that people try and get to the end or get to what they want in different ways. Some people are selfish in ways. Some people are cruel in ways to get, because I'm assuming in the end all anybody wants to be is happy, and like you say, there's nothing you can do about time. Time is until Doc Brown sorts out that DeLorean and we can all go, once we hit 88 miles an hour we can go wherever we want. Time is the thing that everybody is fighting against, and it just depends on how you use that time, whether you use it, and these days is the days of divisiveness and what seems to be hate and all of that kind of stuff. But I really hope that in the end all people want is for everybody to be happy, not just yourselves, just for everybody to be happy. And you would kind of hope that that's what everybody in the world wants, because what's the point otherwise?
Yeah.
You would hope that.
I just reframed that recently, and Marissa can probably speak to it too. One of the things that I said since having kids, I relearned, is I really did think that happiness was the ultimate. And I was like, gosh, I just want my kids to be happy, because that's what I was told all my life, is you just want your kids to be happy. That's it.
Depends what the definition of happy is, though, isn't it? That's the
There's
thing.
that, but it's also the fact that happiness is, I've learned, just as extreme as sadness in an emotion when you're talking about like a spectrum of emotion. So what I said to Marissa after I had my twins was, during the pandemic, I was like, I wish for them peace. I want peace in their days. It's not even about being happy. I just want them to be content. I want them to be able to be, like, I guess happy with themselves, like, but it's just, I want them to be able at the end of the day to go, I like myself. I did good. I made
Yeah.
mistakes. I failed here and there, but I have tomorrow. So I'm at peace when I go to sleep. And that's what, like, you hear it, especially we grew up Catholic, like, peace be with you. It's in the ether. It is, but it just wasn't there as much growing up, where it was like, I just want my kids to be happy, or when people say, oh, I die for my kids. And now the whole thing is, but would you live for them? Would you go get help for them? Would you do the hard thing for them? And these reframes, I feel like this is another reason why I love podcasting and creativity and all these different things that we're talking about. Because if I didn't have access to this, I might have still stayed stagnant, where who's to say that I wouldn't say to a young boy, like, you're crying, like, why are you crying? You shouldn't be crying. And I just wish somebody would say to my dad, like, I love that you are emotional and you wear your heart on your sleeve because you know how precious life is. Because the 5-year-old version of my dad could have used that as much as the almost 75-year-old version of my father. And we used to give him a lot of crap about it in high school, because when Marissa graduated high school, at the party, he started crying, and this was in front of over 100 people. And people gave him crap about it. And then the next year, I graduated from high school, and my younger sister graduated from 8th grade. And the next year, people gave him crap about it. And when it was our turn, my younger sister and I were like, Dad, thank you for caring about us. Like, we knew something wasn't right with that message.
Yeah.
But it's like when you're told by society so many things about so many important things like emotions and mental health and creativity and boxes and norms, it is so hard to go against it. And it's so hard to pick out when it's living in the ether of our own minds, but also in our households and in our communities. It's really interesting to me that some things are global.
Completely agree.
And I'm taking away a lot from this conversation. I really appreciated, especially whether you intended this or not, but as people who are doing a podcast, we want to be good podcast hosts and gracious podcast hosts. So establishing the trust, being slightly vulnerable, but also the parameters of like listening is a critical element, and adjusting and adapting to what the needs of the guest are, because like your wife had eloquently put, we're the constant in this equation. We have a guest for a reason. We need to hear from them. And all of what you contributed is so helpful. I look forward. 2030 is when I think I'll have enough money saved to like make a whole trip out of it, because I don't just want to do Disney and Galaxy's Edge and all that. I also want to do Harry Potter World and make a whole thing of it, right? But it's a can't miss, according to Pavin. When I'm there, I'll be thinking of you next to the Millennium Falcon. I'll do a huge shout out.
Like I say, I'll send you the links of the videos. I think I've got the video of me walking through the crying like a baby, and the Galaxy's Edge and the Millennium Falcon, and making them it just I can't wait till next year. Hopefully, if we can save the same money again and go again, it becomes one of those things. But I was just saying, in regards to the happy thing, maybe being happy isn't what everyone wants, because what some people will be happy causing pain to other people,
Yeah.
And that's the trouble, is that like happy is such a weird word because it can mean so much. But I think what you say about having peace is probably the best thing. But you only want your best for nobody's perfect. You want your best for your children. You don't want them to you don't want them to feel pain, but they're going to feel pain. Just in life, they're going to feel pain. They're going to split up from their boyfriend or their girlfriend. They're going to have heartbreak. They're going to have heartache. They're going to have, and the trouble is, you can't solve all of their problems. And I'm terrible again. If my kids, I've got two kids, two of my kids still live at home, and if they go out, I can't get to sleep until I hear the door go and they're back home. Because I just, it's just my brain will constantly be saying something bad's going to happen. Something bad. Oh my God, I'm going to get a phone call from the police. So And I know it's not, but you
There's the worry. It
It's
never
just the
goes
worry.
away.
that's why I've got no hair, because I have so many kids. And the stress of it all. The stress of it all is just too much,
Hydrated to your face.
Well, that's it. That's the weird thing.
Gravity.
That's the thing about old age, okay? That's the thing about getting older, is that all the hair from my head has gone everywhere else on my body.
Oh my
It's
God.
like everywhere. It's like my nose,
I'm
it's coming out of my
looking forward to
ears.
that, I think, maybe.
It's coming out of everywhere. So I don't. If I could take all the hair from everywhere else on my body and put it on my head, I'd be like a hippie. I'd be all over the place. I could plait
You're
it.
becoming Chewbacca.
I am, exactly. I'm the human Chewbacca, exactly. Goodness me.
Well, you just talked about age, so I've got a question for you. And it's funny because, like you said, we told you, like, we pitched you a bunch of questions that we thought we might ask. I don't think we've asked one of them, which is great. But one question that I have that you just mentioned was old age. First off, I wouldn't have even guessed you're the age you are first.
Wow,
I
that's very
said
kind.
that. I literally told you that's not possible. But if you could tell, so how old am I, Marissa? I know my age by her age.
You'll be 37.
I will be 37. What would you tell your 37 and Marissa's 38-year-old self about podcasting that you could impart wisdom on us for? Like, we're new, we're novices. What should we do? Like, give us your golden nuggets.
I think I don't know whether I've said this to you before, but I said that there's two golden rules. Okay, press record and press save. They're the two golden rules when it comes to podcasting, which I've learned the hard way. That sometimes that doesn't happen, and when that doesn't happen, it's very embarrassing. Luckily, one of the people that it happened to, we recorded for like 50 minutes in this very shed, and all of a sudden my computer just shut down. So but we knew, she was a friend. She was a comedian, but she was a friend. So we just made a joke of it and started again, but literally recorded exactly the same. So we asked them the same questions. She gave us the same answers. We laughed in the same places that we did the first time when we first heard it. So we were very lucky with that. But there are some times when, I think one of the things that I've always said is that nobody's perfect. Nothing is perfect. Podcasting is one of those things. There are, as we found out tonight, there are so many moving parts that if one of those little parts is wrong, it can create bad noise. It can create bad video. Do you know what I mean? And again, if you think about it too much, you wouldn't be able to podcast because you'd be such a nervous wreck. Because there's so much stuff that can go wrong. It's amazing. It's the same as I used to work before I started doing this. The job that I took redundancy from was working for Honda Motor Cars in the UK, making cars. So we made for every shift we made 300 cars a day. Okay, so that was 2 shifts. So we made 600 cars a day basically, because there was an early shift and a late shift. And you would do the job first. When I started there, I had the same job every 72 seconds. So you'd go in, do the same job. Now, this is like hundreds of people as the car is going from being a shell to having parts fitted to being painted. You would think, how? You've got all these nuts and bolts that people are going, and one person has got one job to tighten that nut or tighten that bolt. And when you think about it, you think, how in the hell has anybody sat down and thought, right, that needs to go there, that needs to go there? If there's one bit that's not there, how do you know that the steering wheel's not going to fall off? Or the floor of the car is they're going to be like Fred Flintstone having to use their feet to drive it around. And I thought, I'm not going to worry about it. As long as I get my 72 seconds bit of work done 300 times a day, then that's fine. That's all. Let the boffins work out whether the car's going to work or not. But then I got a job in quality where sometimes things wouldn't fit and sometimes things, and it was frightening because they were putting cars together with bits of tape. and sticky back plastic. And if something didn't fit, they would, let's tuck that up along there. I think, Jesus, oh my God.
Get that car. I drive a Honda. No, I'm
But
teasing.
the thing is, Hondas, they always said is that you would never see a Honda broken down on the side of the road. They were so reliable.
My
Such a
dad also
reliable
told
car.
us that.
And they are, to be fair, you know, if I ever get sponsored by Honda, they are great cars. They are wonderful, wonderful cars. But it always opened my eyes in thinking, you know, as a customer, you look at it, you think, I love Hondas. But sometimes you look at the way that they were made and the way that they were, like, not necessarily the way they were made. It was like if they had a problem, they had ways of solving the problem. So, you know, if there was a wire that was sticking out, they would grab a bit of tape and just stick it up. It wasn't anything technical.
Sure.
But it was mind-boggling to think that you had all of the thousands of these little bits and pieces that are all put together. And it's just like podcasting. It's not just two people or three people talking to each other.
Right.
There is, and that's why I think when you say to somebody, or they say, "Oh, you do a podcast?" Yeah, I do a podcast. And I go, "Oh, right, okay." What I should say is, yeah, I do a podcast. What I do is I book a guest. I then make sure the guest is going to be there on time. I then make sure I've got all my bits and pieces ready. So whether it's sounds or whether it's intros, whether it's a little bit of research, whether it's the fun, you know, facts or the top tens or the quiz or all of that kind of stuff. I've got that all ready. Then we do the recording. Then I make sure the recording is good and is okay. Then I edit it. Then I put it up online. Then I do the video but part of it, which is another thing. Then I book the guest for the next episode. So it's not just, oh, you podcast. No, there's a long, long list of all these different parts. And then I've got to go on social media and I've got to put it on there and put it on there and put it on there and put it on there. And it becomes this thing. It's the typical thing of like the swan. So the podcast, recording the podcast is the swan. Beautiful. It's wonderful. The legs flapping away underneath is everything else and podcasting. It's all the stuff that nobody else sees. So as much as it's wonderful to do this, then there's so much stuff. And when I was doing it before, when I was podcasting on a Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, I was then using the rest of the week to edit, put it up on social media, to the point that my wife was saying, we don't see you anymore. So you need to sort of calm it down a bit now. And so we ended up, like, I think I went to 2 days a week, and then it just ended up being just like Wednesdays, because it does get to the point where it took over my life. And as much as I loved it, it was, you have to have that. I don't call it work because it's a hobby, but the work-life balance has to be there, because otherwise everything else is going. And even now, when I'm doing it just 1 day a week, it's still, you're on your phone, you know, just putting stuff up. And, you know, I try and do it when I'm at work, which, you know, or during dinner break or something like that, so that it doesn't encroach my family time here, you know. So it's record and save is basically the answer. Sorry.
Golden rules. Record and save. I have a final question for you, Pav, which is, we ask all of our guests this, but what is one question you wish more people would ask you?
Would ask me? Would you like some more money? Would be a lovely question.
All the snaps.
Or would you like a free trip to Galaxy's Edge? Would be another one. That would be lovely. Would you like to work at Galaxy's Edge? Now that would, for me.
Would you like to live there?
Oh, absolutely. Could you imagine if you got paid to, like, work where the Ronto wraps, where you make Ronto wraps, and you're just making
you living there. Yes,
I tell you what, the breakfast Ronto wrap. Get one of they are. It got to the point where I was during COVID, I was making my own Ronto wrap at home, so I could have them for breakfast. It's just I'm feeling hungry now.
I was just gonna say, you gotta send us the link to the recipe you use, because, you know, like, I would like to try and make one.
But the trouble is, you can never, because you can't get the same. I don't know what kind of pork sausage they use there, but it is just chef's kiss. Oh, it is just beautiful. It really is. The blue milk and the green milk, not so much. They're not so good. But
I'll keep that in mind.
The Ronto wrap. Oh, dear me.
My stomach is growling.
I know, me too. I'm so hungry.
But yeah, my stomach sounds like Chewbacca now. That's the thing.
A nice
I feel
way to
like we
round
just
out.
like add him in the corner somewhere to this. Oh,
Is it way up?
my camera just moved. Oh.
We'll put Chewie there over your shoulder.
Chewie there.
Human. Well, Pav, it has been such a tremendous pleasure. Thank you for coming on and talking through with us and imparting your wisdom. Record and save. We'll make sure we do that
Make
before
sure you
the
do.
end.
Make sure you do.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to season 3 of Everything is Learning. We hope you enjoyed hearing from Pav as much as we did. Until next time, keep learning.
That's a wrap for this episode of Everything is Learning. If you loved this episode, share it, subscribe, and let's keep the conversation going.
Stay curious and keep learning. We'll catch you next time.